This is page 65 in our notes. We're working on standard geometry 1, area of triangles. And we talked a little bit about this before. So we're going to review this again, area of triangles. So what is the formula to find the area of a triangle? You will need to know this. So the area of a triangle equals, they call it 1/2 times base times height. So they will write it all together like that. You've seen that before. Or some people like to call it area of a triangle equals base times height, and then you divide it by 2. They are the same thing. Dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. This base times height with the multiplication sign is the same as them next to each other here. That also means multiplied. A couple things you need to know, so I'm going to put a star here. Your base and height always make a right angle. We call a right angle, we call it 90 degrees. How do you identify your base and your height? Most of the time when you draw a triangle here, I'm going to draw it here. I'm going to make it like this. It's a right angle. So this is what we're calling a right angle, the 90-degree sign. Your base and your height, they meet right here at this corner. So you can also put your hands like that and make a base and a height with your hands in that same. So you have your base and your height. You will never really need this diagonal, so you don't need the diagonal here. You just need your base and your height. That's how you find area of a triangle. I want to explain the formula just a little bit. So we divide by 2, or some people call that multiplying by 1/2. BC in our notes means because a triangle is half of a rectangle. It's always half of it, okay? Triangle is half of a rectangle. If I were to make the little lines here, you can see where the triangle would be half of a rectangle. The reason why you have to divide by 2 or multiply by 1/2 is because you only want the area of half of this. Another star here. We don't want the area of the whole rectangle. You don't want the area of the whole rectangle, just the half. So I'm going to give you some examples here of some triangles similar to the one I showed you before. I gave you a piece of paper, held it up, kind of looked like this. One side was 8 inches and the other side was 11 inches of the paper. And then there was the diagonal down the middle of the paper. You even saw the right angle here. And so in order to find the area of this half, which would be the triangle, you can get the area of the whole thing and then you can divide it by 2. So 8 times 11 would be the area of the whole thing, which is 88, and then when we divide by 2, that's when we get the area of just the triangle, which was 44 inches squared. We have to label it 44 inches squared. The next thing I want to do is just help you identify base and height, because those are the 2 numbers you're going to need. I'm gonna trace these blue lines here, kind of make a rectangle. 2 blue lines made a rectangle. Make the diagonal through here, and make a right angle here. The moment you see the right angle, you know this is your base and this is your height. Those are the 2 numbers you would need. So if I give you numbers all the way around and the diagonal, you only need these 2 that make your base and height. If I were to use this space right here, go up 2 lines, out 2 lines, and trace this blue line. They may have a dotted line coming down with a right angle here. So you need your base and your height. These are the 2 that make the right angle. Some people can see this triangle like that, but they want to know where's the rest of the rectangle. Like, why is it half of a rectangle? If I make these dotted lines, you can kind of see where the other half to make the full rectangle would show up. So your base and height make a right angle. Just for fun, I'm going to make this one a little bit sideways, trace the blue line here and go down, and then make this diagonal here, and so your right angle here. So you may have to turn your paper, turn your head. This would be like your base, and this would be like your height. That's where they form the right angle. Those are the ones that you would need to find the area of that. So now that we've drawn some images to help you find base and height, I want to do some examples. On your geometry test, you may use calculators, and so I will give you some that are easy numbers and some that are a little more complex. For this example here, I'm going to make a triangle that is 2 blue lines down. I'm going to give you a dotted line here with a right angle. You have 30 kilometers for the bottom, and then this dotted line right in here is 10 kilometers, and I want to know what is the area of this triangle. So you need to remember triangle, area of a triangle, and use the formula. Some people like to call it base times height divided by 2. Others call it base times height times 1/2. So here's your formula. So you need to write your formula and then use that formula knowing which numbers are your base and height. So if I write that again, base times height, and then we're going to divide it by 2. What are our numbers? 30 is our base, and 10 is our height. 30 times 10, 300. Divide by 2, and that equals 150. We labeled it kilometers, and we need to label it squared. Area is squared. Because you're dividing by 2 at the end, some people just take one of these numbers and divide by 2 at the beginning to also get 150 kilometers. In other words, my advice is maybe take your big number here, 30, take your big number and divide it by 2 up front. So then you just have to take 15 times 10 to equal your 150 kilometers squared. Still get the same answer, but maybe you want to take one of the numbers and divide by 2 up front as opposed to multiplying 2 and getting a large number and having to divide by 2 at the end. Same 2 steps, base times height divide by 2, or you could take your base and divide by 2, or your height and divide by 2. The next example I'm giving you looks like this. Kind of 2 blue lines here. I've got a dotted line down the middle. I've got a right angle here. I've labeled this diagonal 8 centimeters, this diagonal 8 centimeters. This is 9 centimeters, and this one in the middle right here is going to be 12 centimeters. So I've labeled all those sides. Which 2 do you need? Well, remember the formula, area of a triangle. So rewrite this with me. Equals base times height, divide by 2. The more you write this, the more you will remember it. There's your formula. So let's set it up. We've got a base times a height, and we have to divide by 2 with our blanks. Which numbers do we need? Which ones do we not need? Our base and height, they are the ones that make a right angle. That would be your 9 and your 12. Which 2 do you not need? You don't need either one of the 8s. So you've got 9 and 12. You could take 9 times 12 and then divide by 2. Some people say they want to take 12 and divide by 2 right up front. So that would give me 9 times 6, and that would equal 54 centimeters squared. If I did not divide here, then I would have had 9 times 12 first, which equals 108, and then have to divide by 2 there to get 54 centimeters squared. Either one works, either answer works, kind of like this one here, as long as you do base times height, then divide by 2. Last example that I want to do on triangles, I'm not going to give you a picture this time. I will just tell you that your base equals 9.72 kilometers and your height equals 6.2 kilometers, and I want you to find the area of this triangle. So do you need to draw a picture? Not necessarily, but you could rewrite the formula. Area of a triangle equals base times height divided by 2. That's your formula. Now you're ready to just fill in your blanks. What times what, and then you're dividing by 2. And really, I gave you both the numbers for base and height, so you're ready to just plug those in. 9.72. And maybe you want to make this an X for time since we're using a decimal, so that way your decimal doesn't get confused with the dot. So you got to take that times 6.2. And on my calculator, when I multiply those and I take them on my calculator, when I put in 9.72 times 6.2, I get 60.264. Don't forget you have to divide by 2 here. Take this answer, divide by 2, and that equals 30.132 kilometers squared. You always label your area squared.